Am I audible? Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Ma'am, should we start the meeting?
Wait for a while.
Too loud.
Maybe another 5 minutes because people are still joining in.
5 minutes, okay.
Okay. Nirbal, I think we can start.
Okay, ma'am. So I would like to request you all to keep your audios on mute for better connection. So yeah. So there was a very cautious man who never laughed or played. He never risked. He never tried. He never sang or prayed. And when he one day passed away, his insurance was denied. For since he never really lived, they claimed he never really died. That is why we need forensic investigation and fraud risk management. So good morning everyone and welcome to today's fifth webinar series of First Dialogue and first webinar series of First Dialogue after the conversion of RSU to RRU, Rashtriya Raksha University, an institution of national importance. My name is Mabel Chandra, student of SFSRM third semester. Now I would like to invite Richa Sharma to introduce our guest speaker. Richa, over to you. Richa.
So what it looks like is your camera is on and your slides are on, so your face is...
I can hear them. No problem.
Hello, Richa, can you hear me? Hello? Hello, Richa. I think there is some network issue from her end. Hello? Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be involved, and this is a joint effort by Approved Group International Malaysia and Raksha University in India. I've actually been over that side of the country to Gujarat, so I'm a little bit familiar with that area. Obviously, I didn't pay a visit to your university. Maybe sometime in the future I may do that. But first of all, just like to acknowledge the work by Dr. Shweta Sharma, the Assistant Professor, School of Forensic Science and Risk Management at the university, and for her, also her team. There's always a team behind everybody, and this Dr. Sharma wouldn't be no different. These things just don't happen. They are the result of well-planned executions. And as I say, thank you very much for the invite to make this presentation to the university, obviously, and also the broader forensic science community, whoever has registered to be involved in this webinar. All right, my name is John Charles Plimsoll Horswell. It's an unusual name. Two names there that pop out if you have anything to do with the United Kingdom or England. Horswell is a surname that's very prominent in Devon and Cornwall. And Plimsoll is another very prominent name. Comes from Sir Samuel Plimsoll, who way back in the 1800s, or maybe even earlier, my history is not as good as it should be, but he was responsible for putting lines on ships, loading lines on ships. It's called the Plimsoll line. It's not a pair of sand shoes, as some who have English background would recognise that Plimsoll's also recognised as sand shoes. Well, mine comes from Sir Samuel Plimsoll, who put the loading lines on ships, which stop the sinking of vessels from overloading. Anyway, that's just a side issue. And my background is in university education, and the academic side is I've got a Master of Science in Forensic Science from Strathclyde University in Glasgow in Scotland. I have a Master of Public Management, which is Public Sector Management, out of Flinders University of South Australia in Adelaide. And I have a Master of Arts in Fire Investigation from Charles Sturt University in Sydney. I'm a Fellow of the Chartered Society of Forensic Sciences in the United Kingdom. I'm a Fellow of the Institution of Fire Engineers in the United Kingdom. And I'm a Chartered Chemist and Fellow of the Royal Australian Chemical Institute. I hold certifications in Certified Fire and Explosion Investigator with the International Association of Fire Investigators, and I'm a certified fire investigator with the IAAI, which is the International Association of Arson Investigators in the United States. Also, I'm a Churchill Fellow in the English-speaking world. Perhaps I don't know about India, but certainly in New Zealand, Australia, Canada, and the United Kingdom is what they call a Churchill Fellowship, in the name of Sir Winston Churchill, who was the wartime Prime Minister of the UK. And that enabled me to travel broadly throughout the United States of America in 1984 and look at fire and arson investigation with various police and fire authorities throughout the United States. An interesting fellowship that started off in the west side of America in Las Vegas, went through the mid St. Louis County, across to the East Coast with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, at both their headquarters at the Hoover Building in Washington, D.C., and also at Quantico, which is their training centre and their forensic science laboratory. I then went up to Boston and spent time with the Fire Protection Association, and then I came down to work with the fire marshal in New York City for a fortnight, then the fire marshal and the arson squad in Philadelphia, then down to Baltimore County, before finalising my tour with a formal course at the United States Fire Academy out at Emmitsburg in Maryland. And that gives you a little bit of a nutshell. I'll go into just a little bit more of my background. The topics covered will be obviously the background, forensic evidence of deliberate fires, and then I'll go on to talk about forensic evidence indicating deliberate fires by management or ownership of factories or companies or businesses. Okay, I've got 45 years now applying forensic science techniques to problem solving. 28 years applying forensic science techniques in the criminal investigation. 14 years of that period as an operational crime scene investigator with a period of time in the forensic chemistry laboratory, and 14 years as a senior manager managing various branches in a multi-discipline, multi-sided forensic science laboratory system throughout Australia, the Australian Federal Police. And I've also, post-government, there is life after government. I'm here in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur. I'm not a Malaysian, I'm an Australian. You probably guessed that from my accent. I have 17 years here in the region applying forensic science techniques to issues of interest to insurers in claims management as a consultant forensic scientist and advisor relating to fire investigation, forensic engineering, electrical, electronic and mechanical failures and breakdowns, and vehicle accident investigation and reconstruction throughout Asia and the Middle East. Experienced many countries throughout the region, and as this is a joint project with your university in India, I will highlight my experiences involving India. Of operations and marketing visits to Chennai, Bangalore, Mumbai, Pune, Medabad, New Delhi, Calcutta, and Jamshedpur. Jamshedpur is the oddball out there. Jamshedpur, as you would know, you're Indian people, is south of Calcutta, and it's called the Tatar town. It's a steel town. We were there for an operational matter. And I've also presented a paper at called Fraudulent Fire, similar to this presentation here, a paper prepared and presented to the 8th International Conference and Exhibition in 2011, which was held in New Delhi, India, and hosted by the Institution of Fire Engineers in India between the 19th and 21st of September 2011. So I have a little bit of experience with your country, a fascinating country that it is, and I hope to return there in the not too distant future. Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty a bit now about what the subject matter we're supposed to be talking about today. The application of the forensic science in the criminal law differs from civil law. The criminal law uses forensic science as an intelligence tool, and there is an increasing reliance on the use of databases, such as DNA, firearms, fingerprints, footwear, and tool mark indices. These were very much around the fingerprints in the early years, and of course the latest one is DNA and firearms to a lesser extent, but DNA at the forefront in relation to contact traces. So also, we in the Australian Federal Police, when I was in the Australian Federal Police, I should say, I should clarify this, one of our major work was the import or the policing or criminal investigation of the importation of prohibited drugs into Australia. Australia is very lucky in a way that we are an island, and we have intelligence networks throughout the world. In relation to the Australian Federal Police, we have liaison officers, or they have liaison officers throughout the world, and intelligence comes in about people wanting to bring in drugs into Australia. Well, we also being a federal agency, have access to the Navy and other Air Force and other assets owned by the federal and operated by the federal government. And this involved looking at packaging and analytical profiling of drug importations, and the packaging in particular. We were not so much into the analytical side. We had another laboratory doing that particular side of it, but we were involved in the intelligence side, the printing, the stamping, the way the packaging was put together, all of these types of issues. The criminal law also looks at comparative forensic science to prove contact and place victims with suspects, and suspects with crime scenes, and of course suspects with weapons. These are the major deals that I was involved in as far as operating as a crime scene investigator. These things I always had in my mind was to put people in places and in contact with things and people. Now, the differences between the criminal law and the civil law and in particular insurance law, looks at a case from the point of view of looking at the circumstances and causation of the loss using the scientific method, along with the identification of those that may be involved and the receipt of appropriate recommendations. The emphasis is placed on a comprehensive, standalone, definitive report. And I can tell you that the reports produced by our company here in Malaysia are in the region of 60 pages, the normal type of reports that you'd find in the business world or the commercial world. Not so much the scientific world. Scientific world, you find their reports are much more succinct and to the point and much more summary rather than comprehensive. So what is forensic science? Well, forensic science is the application of any scientific discipline to problems facing the law, which includes insurance law. Insurance law is contract law. It's a contract between the insured and the insurer. And that's if it's in the contract, it gets dealt with. If it's not in the contract, it doesn't. So it's always well worth reading the fine print when it comes to dealing with insurance contract law. What is forensic investigation? That's a little bit different. Forensic investigation is the process of employing the scientific method to problem solving in investigating fires, vehicle accident reconstruction, and electrical, electronic, and mechanical failures. The scientific method is an organised, logical method employed for problem solving. The scientific method is defined by the NFPA 921, which is a guide put out by the National Fire Protection Association of the United States, which outlines the scientific method as applied to fire investigation. And they list down identify and defining the problem. So we get the issue as there's been a fire and the cause or the origin and cause of the fire is an issue. It needs to be resolved. So you have identification and defining the problem. You next collect the data, which are photographs, plan drawing, debris samples, electrical reticulation, and appliances. These are all things that you would look at in a fire investigation. Research and analyse the data which you've collected. And obviously, when you're doing all this, you're actually interpreting what's happening at the fire scene. You develop a hypothesis, which is inductive reasoning. You test your hypothesis, which is deductive reasoning. And the final hypothesis or the conclusion is the hypothesis which withstands the test. The scientific method is achieved through obtaining statements from witnesses, observations and notes, recording the scene using aerial and terrestrial photography, taking measurements and plans, interpretation of fire patterns and damage assessment, and the collection of potential evidentiary material. Search for the truth. Forensic scientists search for the truth as to what happened in cause and circumstances, and ways to identify who was responsible, as the culpability and possible recovery are very much in the forefront of the insurance companies. Insurance also want to know the exact cause of the loss, so they can elicit recommendations from forensic providers in an attempt to mitigate losses of a like nature in the future. No one wants to suffer multiple fires, and nobody wants to go through that angst, because fires are very, very destructive. There's not much left after a fire has been in your factory, in your company, and been burning for some time. So forensic fire investigators use the following overall methodology: systematic, methodical and thorough search, examination and investigation. Interviewing potential witnesses, appropriate collection of potential evidentiary material using the right containers that will eliminate contamination, therefore ensuring chain of custody is maintained in conjunction with the use of appropriate labels and submission forms. I can't overemphasise it, as you people, or most of the people listening today would probably be laboratory-based scientists. I cannot overemphasise the importance of this type of activity at scenes, where you're interpreting what's going on at the scene. There are two things. One is the technical side, which is all the photographs, the measurements, the records, the taking statements, all that. That's the technical side. Where we earn our money, or where the crime scene or the fire scene investigators come to the forefront, is their ability to interpret what has happened, what has occurred. So it has been debated in fire investigation circles if fire investigators are conducting an investigation and not just reporting on what they have been told. There's a lot of discussion around fire investigation around are they just recording what they've been told, or are they actually investigating what has occurred? Fire investigation must be comprehensive and must consider all potential fire causes as per the use of the scientific method and be considered an investigation. What has been stated and found must be verifiable before it can be accepted. And in my dealings with loss adjusters, they are people who are the intermediaries between the insured and the insurer, and they go to a fire or a loss, and they're looking at two aspects. They're looking at the causation, will it engage the policy, and they're also looking at the cost, because they reduce the cost of the claim. And it's right that they do that, because no one could expect to earn money from an insurance policy. An insurance policy is only to put you back in the position you were or you were in prior to the loss or the fire. So we don't earn money from insurance policies. Fire investigation. In addition, all accidental fire causation must be considered and eliminated before a deliberate fire is considered. And this is from the literature, and also the court from court rulings. They will not entertain a fire now these days being called a deliberate fire unless you've eliminated all accidental fire causes. The reason being is there's been too many fire cases in the United States where people have been found guilty and ended up in prison for the crime of arson or deliberately setting fires, for cases or for crimes that they did not commit. And one famous case in the United States, a young man was executed for allegedly murdering his 3 daughters in a fire. So this elimination process must be recorded, obviously, and must be, when you appear in court, must be passed on to the court as the provision of expert evidence. Fire investigation. There has also been debate where laboratory chemists, and I'm a chemist as well, so I can talk a little bit about this, chemists and not fire investigators are involved in fire investigation. They tend to consider that a fire is or is not a deliberate fire based on the presence and or the absence of ignitable liquid residues. Ignitable liquid residues are items of accelerants, you might call them, where they've been used in fires to enhance the development and spread of a fire. Well, a lot of laboratory chemists say that if they don't get a result from their GCMS analysis of the fire debris, it's not an arson as far as they're concerned. Well, there are so many other aspects to fire investigation besides ignitable liquid residues, I can assure you of that. This is dangerous in the extreme. If this is the only issue considered, as it may be that the fire debris sample taken was taken from an area where there was no ILRs, or the ILR had been consumed in the fire because of the extent of the damage, or the minute amount of ILR that may be used, So, fire investigation. Fire investigators, in addition to any results of fire debris analysis, consider the following. I would say there's one more there that I was going to include, but I didn't include, and that is people must get to the fire scene. Now, unfortunately, a fire scene is such, or if it is an arson or a deliberate fire, when people go to a scene, set the fire, these tracks, footwear, whatever there is that people move around the building are usually obliterated by the fire service. So that to a lesser degree, but certainly signs of break-in by others other than the fire service. The fire service have to break in or have to break down doors and break into windows and so forth to get hose streams up to start fighting the fire. Multiple fires which are independent of each other. If you get 8 fires in a building and you can prove there are 8 separate fires, the fact that ILRs or no ILRs are found doesn't matter a damn, because the multiple fires in themselves will indicate a deliberate fire. Trailers. Now, if trailers are found where petrol or kerosene or diesel have been led from one fire to another and have been initiated, there will be damage beneath where those trailers are, particularly on carpet and particularly on flooring, timber flooring. They'll become quite evident, and that in itself too is a sign of a deliberate set fire. We don't need ILRs. ILRs are a nice icing on the cake, obviously, but they're not a necessary part of the icing, or the part of the cake. Presence of weathered ignitable liquid residues at one or more fire sites independent of each other, that I previously spoke about. Interpretation of GCMS ion chromatograms, weathered ignitable liquid residues versus unweathered. Now, what does that really mean? Finding unweathered ignitable liquid residues may indicate the accidental or intentional contamination of the fire scene. Accidental. How would this be done in a fire scene? Well, movement of fire service personnel in fighting the fire may contaminate the fire scene. They may walk through puddles or something. They may walk through somewhere where there's an ILR and they take it into the fire scene. Now, that is an unweathered, that comes up in analysis as an unweathered sample. Now, that's important to know. Poor patterns, again, use petrol in circumstances where petrol should not normally be on the premises, as petrol is only used to propel motor vehicles in small motors attached to pumps and generator sets. So petrol is for a particular purpose. So if you find say you have a house fire, and if you find petrol in the house fire, it's not normal that someone would store petrol in their house unless they stored it in the garage. So that would be possibly a reason to have, an accidental reason to have petrol on premises. But if it's up in your master bedroom, I don't think too many people have petrol in their master bedroom, because there's no motors to propel, and there are no pumps and generator sets to maintain running. Right, cctv footage of the intentional pouring and ignition of an ignitable liquid. Would you believe I have got cctv, had cctv over the years, where a person has poured petrol all over the front of this particular restaurant and has set the thing on fire, all in front of the CCTV. Great evidence, excellent evidence. You don't need any other evidence. Excellent evidence. So people are that silly, they don't understand what CCTV is all about, some of them, and they do these silly things in front of the CCTV cameras. So the person initiating also the fire may get caught up and injured in the resulting flash fire. Another case I had where this guy set 8 fires within this warehouse, and he was to initiate the fire at a roller shutter at the side of the building. Well, when he initiated the fire, what had happened is that the vapours from laying out these 8 fires had all intermixed with oxygen in the air. And of course, when he was kneeling down, we could tell from the injury patterns on his body. When he knelt down and started the fire, he received the first flash of that fire. And when you receive a flash in a fire, you get surprised. You go, oh! And what you're doing is sucking in the heat and the flames into your lungs. And this is what he did. And of course, he lasted about 3 days and ended up dying in hospital. And what the death, the mode of death is pulmonary edema, and pulmonary edema is not a pleasant way to die. It's drowning in your own fluids. So this is how this particular individual died. So very important to look at that aspect of a fire investigation as well. So it's not just about ILRs. A laboratory chemist would tell you. It's just not about one particular aspect of fire investigation. It is bringing all these things together, which is called investigating, and actually taking from this investigation what has actually occurred, and then reporting on it. All right, what do we look at fires? And this will give you another indication. It's not just about ILRs. We consider and eliminate electrical failures, lightning. You know that lightning causes fires? They do. Static electricity. Careless use of cooking equipment. I've been to a few wok fires where the wok has actually flared up, and that flame from the wok has actually got into the overhead extraction equipment, and the extraction equipment is not well maintained. And of course, you lose maybe not only that restaurant, you may lose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, the restaurants, because they're all connected to the exhaust mechanism. Hot works: welding, friction, cutting, and grinding. Careless use of smoking materials. We all know, I'm pretty sure we all know, I'm an ex-smoker from way back. I did about 5 years of smoking until I gave it up. And I'm very much aware of people's habits with smoking materials. and they don't seem to care to stub the smoking materials out. They'll flick them here, they'll flick them there, and there's a lot of fires caused by careless use of smoking materials. Praying altars and candles. We have the Buddhist community here in Malaysia, and I'm sure throughout the Asian region there are a lot of praying altars, use of candles, even electrical candles, a lot of things, floating candles, and where people put out offerings of fruit with the floating candles, and of course the rats, mice, and so forth come along at night saying, "Oh, all my Christmases are come at once. Let's get into it." And they tip over the candles, and of course a fire starts, which is hinging on the next one, animal activity. Rodents. I've had fires with rodents. Rats love chewing through electrical conduit and electrical insulated conductors. And when they chew through the conductors, they can cause electrical arcing, and which will result in a fire. Reptiles. I've seen reptiles in electrical installations where they've crossed over and caused massive damage to electrical installations. Spontaneous combustion. Well, spontaneous combustion occurs, and a classic example of that is vegetable oils that do self-heat. And if you keep the air circulating, there's no problem. But if you don't keep the air circulating, and you have what is classified as a thermal runaway, you can have a spontaneous ignition fire, a spontaneous combustion fire. Auto-ignition relates to the heating of a material to a temperature where it bursts into flames. Everything, timber, paper, cardboard, plastics, all these things have an auto-ignition temperature. And if it gets heated up enough, it will burst into flames. And this is the way a lot of fires are transmitted throughout compartments. They move from one piece of furniture to another by overheating the next piece of furniture and it auto-igniting and then continuing the process. Human involvement, accidental of course, or negligence, hard to prove, but it does exist. And intentional human involvement where people want to sell their property back to the insurance company. And any other cause that could potentially be an ignition source based on the industry. An example of this is friction, where you have movement of conveyor belts and movement of items where things can grind against each other, steel on steel, and you get sparks and heat produced from friction. That gives you a little bit of an idea on all the things that we look at when we investigate fires. And as I say, it's not just looking for ILRs and analysing them by GCMSs. As smart as that may be, it's not just about that. All right, now what do we do when we report on these issues? A conclusive report. At this level of confidence, all reasonable alternate hypotheses have been considered and eliminated. That means what has occurred has occurred. Probable. At this level of confidence, the chance that the hypothesis is true is more than 50%, and this is an opinion. Possible. At this level of confidence, the hypothesis can be said to be feasible, but cannot be declared probable in cases where two or more hypotheses are equally alike. So we must report two possible fire causes. When you have a suspected cause, at this level of confidence, corresponds to a perception that the hypothesis may be true, but there is insufficient data to draw a conclusion to the exclusion of any other reasonable conclusion. And these fires must be reported as an unknown fire cause. So now let's move on from, this is the second part, let's move on to the third part, which is the one that insurance companies really like, because if we can prove that it's a deliberate fire, and that deliberate fire was caused by management or ownership of the factory or the business, they will not pay out. However, if it's just a deliberate fire by a person or persons unknown, they will pay out. So that's the issue here, is all insurance companies, when they're looking at fire investigation, are looking for that little added thing. Is there any smell or sniff of anything to do with management involvement in the fire? And we'll go through a few things that will highlight what that really means. Okay, management initiated fires, indicators, or what they call in the insurance industry, red flags. Disconnection of water pipes in the firefighting system prior to the fire. I've had that. Disconnection of phone lines from the intruder alarm prior to the fire. I've had that. Unauthorization of duplication of keys. I've had that too, where people have sworn blind that the keys are limited edition keys and are restricted in their issue to various people. And locks not forced but open with a key. I've had that too. Fire scenes seeded with material to give the impression of a greater quantity of stock pre-fire. And I have had that too. There's a little bit of a thing with the insured, some insured, they believe that, all right, we've had this mishap or this unfortunate, unforeseen fire. Let's make the most out of it and put a lot more stuff in there so we can claim a lot, or make it look like there's a lot more stuff in there that we can claim a bigger claim. So they're still committing a fraud, but they're committing a fraud on top of a fire which may well have been a accidental fire. So they have an accidental fire and they say, well, let's make the most of this. Let's let's claim for all this property that was in there, and that's a fraud, because, as we all know, anyone in the moral side of a fraud is anyone who obtains a benefit or advantage by deception commits fraud. That's telling lies and getting money, telling lies and getting a benefit or advantage. You can tell my ex-police background coming out here, I'm very much against people telling lies. Okay. All right. We have here an interesting scene. A lot of people couldn't make too much out of that. It's things, and I'll tell you what it actually is in a minute, but it's things that have burnt to ash. But it's telling a big story. This is a godown in your neighbouring country called Pakistan, where it was stored in their godown a number of bales of cotton. Cotton's big industry in Pakistan. Now, when they bale cotton, they bale it and they restrain it with wire. There are two things that you look for in something like this, and we look for it as we moved all these wires out. One was wire that you would expect to find from a bale had a bale of cotton burnt. And I can tell you that wire coming from a bale of cotton should be square. In this scene here, you can see a lot of round wire. Like it is still in its pristine condition and just been thrown in the fire just to add to what is already there, to make the loss adjusters feel or think that there's a bigger loss. So when they count one of those round things, they count as one bale, which in actual fact it's not. It's just wire waiting to be bound on a bale. So little subtle things like this. These guys, they're smart, they think they're smart, but they're not smart enough. And when you bring in forensic science into this, that's where they come unstuck. All right, these two photos here The one on the left is the pumps for firefighting equipment, and you can see that it is disconnected from the pump, the top of the pumps themselves, the pipes. So this was disconnected prior to the fire. Obviously, they wanted a bigger fire. They didn't want anything to interfere with the burning of the whole building. On the right, you can see the phone lines have been removed. That tells you that someone, again, this was found in the office. The office hadn't burnt. This was found in the office. So if you're going to burn a building, you make sure you burn the office as well. Because this was, this straight away told a story. These photographs tell a story. Right, management-initiated fires, we go back to the words again. Indicators of red flag. Business not viable. Insurance cover increased prior to the fire. Management have alibis for the fire, for the time of the fire. They're away on business or touring. We've got this added thing here that the population in Malaysia is threefold. It is Malay, next down it's Chinese, and next down it's Indian. And you'll find that the Chinese businessmen are off in Shanghai or somewhere when they have a fire. Unusual, very unusual. So it's yelling out, please investigate me, please investigate me. Low quantities of stock. Stock removed prior to the fire. Stock replaced with valueless stock before the fire. Now we go back to the photographs again, once again from your neighbouring country, Pakistan. These people swore blind that there was restricted access to these keys, and these keys had never been duplicated. Well, I can tell you, they have, one of those has. That's A, and they couldn't prove to me. They said it was restricted issue, and they couldn't provide the evidence or the actual notes, the schedule to who they were issued with. So you'll get people trying to tell you all kinds of stories while you're doing your investigations. On the right there's a lock. Now this is a very ancient lock and something that you would find in a place like Pakistan. I've got no doubt about that. But there's no sign of any trauma to the lock. Nothing's been forced. Nothing's been banged with a hammer. That's not been touched by anything. So the only deduction you can deduce from this is it's been opened with a key. So property machines of significant value have been removed prior to the fire. CCTV switched off or inoperable at the time of the fire. We get this quite a lot as well because it's one of the questions we do ask because we want CCTV. CCTV is probably the best evidence you're going to get other than other people running around with telephones doing videos. That's another good way of getting some evidence. Not always, but the CCTV will give you the evidence right from the minute one or right from second one, when it starts. Intruder alarm switched off or inoperable at the time of the fire. Office is damaged, destroying all records. First thing I look at is how did the fire develop? Is it in the product, or is the office the main thing that's burnt and the rest is just secondary? Because you'll find that people want to destroy records, although there are records to be gleaned from other areas. People do think this way and destroy the office and its records. A security guard stood down for the shift when the fire occurred. Would you believe I had a fire like that? Would you believe it? It had a combination of things. It had a shift security guard at the gate stood down for the shift that the fire occurred, and it had trailers. It had lots of different things indicating it was a deliberate fire. Regardless of ILRs and laboratory chemist's view, which is very secondary to this fire because these things meant something. And they all put together, they told a story. The next one is restricted key holders. You must have restricted key holders. Quality management systems these days, most quality management systems require all these things. Okay, more of this. Secured premises whereby firefighters had to break in to fight the fire. Relatives, friends, members of management are burnt during the fire. We've covered that in the previous slides. Firefighting equipment disabled prior to the fire. Sprinklers, hose reels, hydrants. Company witness provides erroneous statements where he first saw the fire. Mobile phone records do not support statements, timing-wise. You start to get an indication then if someone's telling you the truth. If everything marries up and the timing's right, you're on the right road. But if it all is haywire and nothing marries up, your actual witness is probably not telling you the truth. Company-related suspects have burns that are typical of deliberately lit fires. Company-related suspects have ignitable liquid residues on their clothing. Now, that's where things start to come to the forefront. GCMS of all the clothing that's seized, if the clothing is seized in a timely fashion. Remember that I'm now working on the civil side now, and we have cases that come in 1-2 months after they occur. Some quicker, but none of them as quick as the police would have. When something happens in criminal law, you usually get involved pretty quick. Company-related suspects who are found to be deceased at the scene exhibit soot in the trachea, indicating they were alive at the time of the fire. And that's a little pretty photograph to show you that on the left-hand side is a trachea that's opened up, and you can see the soot in the trachea. That indicates to me that person was alive at the start of the fire. He wasn't killed and then burnt, is what we're looking at here. He was alive at the time of the fire. The photograph on the right is an intriguing photograph, and this one will probably stick in the minds of a lot of people watching this presentation. This is a hair shaft of a hair, and the bubbles you see in there are heat bubbles or air bubbles in the medulla, which runs through the centre of the hair shaft, and this is caused by close proximity to a fire. All right, so that's Roshef, that's it finished. We'll now look at the questions, and so go back to speaking to her, I suppose. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
So,
I've finished the presentation, and
am I audible?
I hope that you got something out of that.
If you have any questions, you can type in the chat box.
I can what? Sorry.
Hello.
Oh, if anybody has
audible?
questions, yeah.
Yeah, if anyone have any question, they can type in the chat box. So Dr. Shweta Sharma have one question. She has asked, what are the clues for source of fire?
Sorry, will you come again?
What are clues for source of fire?
What? Sorry, I still can't understand it.
So you can see in the chat box too.
Chat box too, where's that?
Yeah.
Ah, I see, okay. What's she saying? Please.
What are the clues for source of fire?
What are the clues for source of fire? Okay. Well, what we tend to do, the first thing we tend to look at, we go into a warehouse or a factory, and of course everything's burnt and everything's fallen down and everything's in a mess. What do you think initially as you think to yourself, my God, where do I start? How do I interpret this? And what we look for at the start of anything is look for the depth of burning and the most serious area of burning. That's a starter. Once we've got that, where we know that is occurred, we've got then we look for the reason why that's occurred. Because low burning usually indicates the area of origin of the fire. And I'm not saying this is with every fire. This is most fires. Okay, so the damage assessment is a very important part of it to start with. Okay, does that answer the question? Because there's a lot of things you've got to go through. You've got to look at electrical, you've got to look at a lot of things to look at did the fire. Once you've got the area of origin, and then you've got to look for the reason for the fire. So I give you the area of origin, low burning, most damage, but that's not the causation. The causation is much more involved. People know where.
So, are there any questions?
Thank you very much for a very informative session. Okay, that's good. Thank you. No, it's been a pleasure to talk to you people, and I really do hope you've got something out of that and learned a little bit about the way that insurers think and the way that we in the private sector, not the criminal investigation side, but we in the private sector operate. We are a little bit different to the criminal investigation. We're more interested in the commercial side. We're interested in the contract. Will the insurance company pay out on the contract? And if not, why not? And is there something in the contract that actually allows the insurance company to say, no, we're not paying? Because what happens then, if the insurance company says to you, we're not going to pay your claim, you're going to get angry. And you might go to the court then and say, I'm going to sue that bugger sue that insurance company for my money. Now, if they're telling lies and it's all a shonky deal and they've done the deliberate fire, perhaps they will not go any further. Perhaps they'll withdraw the claim. So all this happens on the civil side without even the police even knowing anything about it. And a lot of times the police do not get to know about a deliberate fire because the insurance company is more interested on the commercial side. All right. So there you go.
So I don't think there are not any questions, so we can proceed. Now I would like to invite Dr. Shweta Sharma for a vote of thanks. Ma'am, over to you.
Hello. Yes. Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you, John, sir. It was a very fruitful session. The whole dynamics of fire investigation and fraud investigation was quite practically explained by you. I hope we take this association further in the coming future as well and benefit out of your experience. At the outset, I would like to thank you and your team, including Roshif, for constantly letting us know what are the requirements. And Kirit and Varsha, Dr. Nirali Jasani specifically because she, in fact, brought us together to bring the seminar up. The whole team of First Dialogue, Mr. Sudhanshu Shekhar Tiwari, faculty convener, all the governing council members, Dr. Kalpesh Solanki, Dr. Sumit Kumar Chaudhary, Dr. Mahesh Tripathi, Dr. Parvesh Sharma. I hope they're all listening. To the student volunteers of First Dialogue, including especially Mabel and Richa for bringing this in the form it is. All the participants who are present nationally and overseas for their time and participation in the program. Thank you so much, sir. Over to you. Can I request Prachi ma'am to share the appreciation certificate? This is just a small appreciation certificate that we have for you. Had it been personally, you would have visited Rashtriya Raksha University. Had it been not the challenges of COVID that we are going through.
Mm-hmm. No, it'll take pride of place in my collection behind me.
May I request Dr. Sumit Kumar Chaudhary sir to just, if he's available, can he? Sir, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, yeah. No, that's not me. You're talking
He's
about
the dean of our school.
Yeah,
I think he's busy with something.
I would hope that this is the beginning of something in the future with your university, insofar as that we have in the past as a company, we've done a lot of fire investigations throughout India, and we anticipate actually getting involved with the Indian market once again. So one of our marketing trips or one of our operational trips or what have you, we could actually pay your university a visit or whatever, and maybe even make a different presentation to your local people at the university itself. So bear that in mind. As I say, I'm happy to do that to form a relationship with the university and your people. So yeah, that's over to you.
Thank you, sir. Mabel, over to you.
Hello, am I audible? Hello.
Hello?
Hello. Yeah, thank you so much for this. Yeah, thank you so much, sir, for this very informative session for us.
Okay.
We were very obliged to hear you. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Now you all can leave the meeting. Thank you so much.
Okay, that's the end of the meeting. Yeah. Thank you very much, everybody, and been good to talk to you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. Right.
Is it done?
Done.
All right, cool.
So you did the
Unplug it.